Technicolor. Or should I say, Technicolor. Technicolor is its own verb now, right? People use it to describe things that are vibrant and richly saturated, but it is its own technology. A technology that was vital to color in film. Let's go back to when movies were a bit more monochromatic. But before I get into that, if you like this video or like any of the content on this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Also, consider becoming a member of my Patreon to help me continue making videos. Hit the link in the description for more. The early days of cinema were all about black and white. And don't get me wrong, the films were thrilling and innovative and beautiful, but honestly, there's only so much you can do with 50 Shades of Grey. No Christian. Enter Technicolor, the technology that painted Hollywood in hues that were so vibrant, they made real life look kind of drab and boring. It wasn't just a technical innovation, it was a revolution that turned the dream machine into a kaleidoscope of emotion, art, and sometimes oversaturated drama. The Technicolor story begins in 1916, and spoiler alert, it wasn't with ruby red slippers. The company's founders, Herbert Kalmus, Daniel Comstock, and W. Burton Westcott, were brainy types with a knack for tinkering. Fun fact, they named the company Technicolor because it sounded futuristic, like something that Nikola Tesla would approve of. But early attempts to bring color to film were less somewhere over the rainbow and more somewhere in the trash. Their first processes was a two-color system that involved filming through red and green filters. The company showed off their first process in 1917. They did this with a feature-length demonstration film called The Gulf Between. Now, this system required a special camera and projector that ran black and white film through color filters, which used adjustable lenses to line up the color on screen. The results were interesting at best. Skin tones looked weird, and greens were radioactive, and it wasn't the rainbow-colored revolution that they had promised. But I guess you gotta start somewhere, huh? By the 1920s, Technicolor had upgraded its game with a process called Technicolor Process 2, which was still a two-color system, but added a key improvement, which was a beam-splitting prism. A record of the green and the red were recorded simultaneously onto black and white film, which was then advanced 2 frames at a time over and over. So that meant twice as much film was exposed than normal, and the camera had to run twice as fast as it usually would. Now, the red and green image were then put on the film foot to foot rather than head to head, so that they were inverted on each other. Then when prints were made, the red and the green side were printed onto 2 separate strips of film. Then they would remove the silver from the image and glue the 2 strips together. Then the red side of the film was dyed green and the green side of the film was dyed red, which would remove parts of the color spectrum from those sides of the film. Instead of adding the 2 together, they would subtract it, which was different from their first way of doing it, which would add the colors together. And now the film prints could be shown in any standard film projector anywhere in the world.
Yes, science!
This breakthrough led to The Toll of the Sea in 1922, which was the first film made in Technicolor. The lush visuals wowed audiences even if the film was a bit of a tearjerker. But shall we pay attention to the real star here? The color red. If you watch old Technicolor movies, you notice a certain obsession with red. You know, scarlet dresses, crimson lips, fire engine sunsets. And this wasn't just an aesthetic choice. People didn't just love red just for the sake of loving red, you know what I'm talking about? The process just happened to work better with warmer colors. Blues and greens? Nah, who needs them? They got a bit lost in translation, no Coppola. But by the 1930s, Technicolor really hit its stride. After years of trial and error, the geniuses at Technicolor unveiled their 3-strip process, which was a groundbreaking system that captured all 3 primary colors, which are red, green, and blue, on separate strips of film. This was a big deal. Now, it was expensive and cumbersome, and the cameras were huge, and it made today's cameras look like pocket toys, but it worked. And oh boy, did it work. Then came along the Wizard of Oz. And this is when Technicolor became a household name. The yellow brick road wasn't just yellow, it was so yellow that it could make Tweety Bird blush. The ruby slippers sparkled. The poppies practically popped off the screen. And audiences sat there slack-jawed thinking, I think we put the wrong type of mushrooms in our dinner. Not to be outdone, Gone with the Wind, which came out the same year, cemented Technicolor's reputation as the way of the epic Hollywood spectacle. Scarlett O'Hara's emerald green dress was almost as famous as her tantrums, and every frame looked like a painting you'd see at a museum, or, in an old hotel or something. Here's the thing about Technicolor. It wasn't really a subtle way to color a film. It was for people that wanted the saturation of their film turned up to 11. Directors like Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger embraced this with films like The Red Shoes, which looked like a fever dream of a ballet enthusiast who just discovered neon lights. Even Alfred Hitchcock got involved in the action with Vertigo, using Technicolor to crank up the tension of San Francisco's dizzying wonderland of greens and reds. But Technicolor wasn't just about making things look pretty. It was about mood, storytelling, and creating a world that felt bigger and bolder than reality. Whether it was the landscapes in the African Queen or the romantic glow of Singing in the Rain. Technicolor wasn't afraid to go all in. If subtlety is an art, Technicolor was more like graffiti in Las Vegas. Now, as much as we love Technicolor, as we know, it's not really a thing today. But it didn't really die, it just rebranded. By the 1950s and 60s, newer, cheaper color processes like Eastman color started to dominate the industry. These technologies were easier to use and flexible and didn't require a PhD to do the motherfucker. Technicolor cameras were also kind of finicky, and you almost had to be a rocket scientist to even thread the film. But Technicolor didn't fully disappear. Instead, it adapted to times and became more of a post-production color correcting system. But its legacy outlasted the technology that eventually was outdated. Today, Technicolor is more of a vibe, and you can hear people saying, I want that Technicolor look, or I see life in Technicolor, or Technicolor this and that, and Technicolor rah. But even still, you have filmmakers looking for that Technicolor look, like Scorsese and Killers of the Flower Moon. Technicolor wasn't just an innovation for cinema, it was an innovation for the world. It gave us a new term to use for vibrant, saturated images. And without that technology, we wouldn't have the colorful films that we have today. And films might have just remained in black and white.